Welcome back, everybody. Welcome to that Flavor in Your Ear podcast, man. Today we got a special guest, season 2, first episode. So we're starting off with a bang. We got Mike, Mdlp from Battle Axe Gym. Right?
What's going on? Thank you very much for having me.
Oh, man, thank you for being. I'm really excited for this one.
Me too.
Because it's different.
Yeah, I think so. I was watching your stuff, and it's an honor to be here. First of all, I'm not going to fluff your balls. I think it's really cool that you invited me on this show. So I'm excited. You have a lot of athletes, and I think we're a little different than the athletes that have been on the show. So
that's why I'm excited.
Yeah.
So one thing I love about the show is real reason why I enjoy doing it, aside, I consider this a motivational podcast, right? I consider it everyone that we've had, whether it's been the athletes, the DJs, or the chefs, or anyone that we've had on here. I like the idea that people understand how they got to a journey, right? Like, it's cool to get on someone's Instagram, or like they see that's like such a fast forwarded thing to see, right? They don't know the journey, they don't know the process, they don't know the work that goes behind it. And for me, to me, it's like people that listen to this, they get motivated, right? They see like, oh man, like maybe I need to get on my shit. Maybe I'm not just running out of luck. Man, this is what it takes to open up a gym. This is what it takes to run a gym. This is what it takes to organize the gym. Sure. And a lot of things, or events, you know what I mean? So a lot of work goes into that. So hopefully we motivate someone today in a new way. And for me, it's just about learning. Sure. I just love to learn different trades, different people, and I think it makes you a more mentally stronger person.
Absolutely. And even talking about it, every time I'm a guest, it's always flattering, but hearing what I've done and what we've done, and I say we because of the people of my gym and people who have helped me, I learned gratitude. I learned a lot of things that are qualitative, things that are easy for me, like compassion, gratitude, being grateful. But also in talking, I learned from another host. I myself have a podcast, so hearing how you do stuff, I just get really motivated. So yeah, absolutely. And we're going to talk about that too. We're going to talk about the podcast. Oh, sure.
Okay, so let's start beginning, right? Before Battle Axe.
BB, right?
So what do we get? You were an athlete, so rugby, Muay Thai fighting. Were these in the States? Were you?
So I got into martial arts when I was 14, which is 24 years ago. I'm 38, so that's to put it out there for whatever reasons. But martial arts was my first love. Okay. I did that for a while. I went to school up north, and then I came back down after I graduated, and I started to get harder into sports. Yeah. Muay Thai was my first choice, really. I wanted to get into fights. So when I came back from Penn State, that was my school. Go Penn State, we're 5-0. Okay. But I told my old coach, he said, hey, if you want to fight, you got to lose weight, because I came back a little chunky. So martial arts was my choice. I had 6 amateur Muay Thai fights. My 6th one, I was kind of done with it. I mean, I really am an obsessive person. So I would just dedicate, waking up at 4 a.m, doing the 5-mile runs. I was obsessive. I was young and I could do it. And then after that, I kind of wanted to play something else. Yeah. When you're a fighter, all you can do is fight.
It was like boredom?
Not boredom, just heartbreak. Okay. I lost my last fight and I was just kind of worn out. I mean, I dedicated so much. Training was getting difficult. I was almost always alone. Yeah. I didn't have a lot of partners. Fighting wasn't as big 15 years ago in Miami. Not for Muay Thai anyway. So I wanted to do something else, and rugby was something I wanted to do since I was a kid, and I always thought I was built for that, like too small for football but too big for soccer. Okay. So I got into rugby, and in that aspect too, I was also wanting to do strongman. So finally, it's like I was out of a cage. Right. And I can do, because when you're training for a sport respectfully, that's all you should do. Right. So then I got into rugby, powerlifting, strongman, all the hard shit.
So it's funny that you talk about the rugby stuff. Last night, I actually just had this conversation last night. Do you feel like rugby players can actually play football?
I think rugby players are superior
to football players.
Fuck yeah. I don't care who does that. Now, look, bear with me. Both sports, respectfully, are different. Football is a collision sport. Right. Rugby is a contact sport. Okay. I have played rugby with football players, and I have demolished them. Okay. From 350 O-linemen to the ones that kind of do pretty well are the safeties, these kind of positions.
They're more mobile, more agile.
You're running for 80 minutes, man. Now, again, I always say that a full-blown, well-rounded rugby athlete is better because you're well-rounded. You have cardio, you have athleticism, you know how to tackle correctly. You have to also be very intelligent in multi-positional places. You have to be offense, defense, you have to move. Now, the specificity of football is very interesting. I'm not going to dog a running back that all he needs to do is perfect the craft of running. Right. But very, very few times where you see a running back that can catch or throw, right? In rugby, you have to play all the positions. So it's just like I'm going to make the choice in the sand. Rugby is just a superior sport because not only mentally but physically. That doesn't mean I don't like football. I think football is the fucking coolest, but rugby is just.
So why don't you think it catches that much traction in the States?
It's not commercial friendly like soccer. You know, if you look at it from the business aspect, you can't stop a middle. It's more about money. You can't. There's no plays. The American attention span is very short. It's like really quick. We need to have like right now basketball, football, and even baseball. It's falling off. It's still big, but it's not like what it used to be.
Full baseball game
because of our attention span. We need commercials. We need shit happening. We need scores. I mean, the only time we watch baseball is in the playoffs because it's the best of the best.
Yeah.
So that's where I see rugby is like the soccer. You know, it's like you're looking at this, and unless you're brought up culturally, you don't know what the fuck's going on. I don't know what was going on when I got
feel
there.
Like a lot of the same elements that people will love about football will love about rugby.
It's fucking awesome, man. And once you play it and you live it, you have such a respect for it. It's definitely a drinking sport, you know. It's like you're watching this play happen, but it's not commercial friendly. There's no plays, there's no instant action, there's great contact, but it's not collision like.
But everything is improvised.
Correct. Right. And like football has like plays, you know, and you know who's gonna get fucking walloped.
Yeah.
Honestly, watching a football tackle is pretty fucking awesome too.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, my argument was this. I think I said like, imagine a 350-pound guy that runs like a 4.3.
Right.
Wreck you.
I mean, so I was playing at my fastest. I was like 245, 250. I'm 5'10". I was fucking fast. Like I can run not that that's a lot. Like 100 meters, I was probably running like in the low 10s, which is okay for a fat guy.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, but you're doing this constantly in the scrum, and it's like a wrestling match, and it's 80 minutes of battle. You know, but yeah, these guys. I mean, I've been hit by guys that are 275, 6'4". I'm like, what? And they don't stop.
Yeah,
I'm like, stop it.
Well, because it is nonstop. Yeah.
It is. It's constant cardio. But again, you know, different positions. Because we'd also get football players that would come try it on. They're like, it's just too much cardio. They just didn't enjoy it. It's different perspective. Also, they would tackle with their faces forward and always break their noses. But that's a different conversation.
Because it's a different.
There's no face mask.
There's no face. Yeah, exactly.
No, you just elbow the guy in the mouth, and that's the end of that.
So with the whole, how long did you do the rugby for?
So I was part of the Miami Tridents. Go Tridents.
Okay.
There's two teams in Miami. There's the Miami Rugby RFC, which is our rivals. Fuck them. But and then there's the Miami Tridents. But I played for 2.5 seasons. And I said half a season because the last season I was a little banged up and I pulled out. And I played a prop. So the prop are the guys in the front row that bang into each other. It's like an O lineman and a D lineman in the same place. Okay. And I was a small prop, but I was conditioned and I was aggressive. Yeah. So I played that about 2.5 years at the same time as doing strongman and powerlifting. So I was competing in powerlifting, strongman, and rugby at the same time.
But while playing rugby, you were already like physically getting training. Like
Yeah, I came from fighting, so my cardio was great.
Yeah.
It was just my size and my IQ. I didn't know what the fuck I was doing half the time. And you have to be, especially in the prop, in the scrum, where you can break your neck, which you got close a couple times. You have to know what the fuck you're doing. Yeah. And you have to know what to do. It's not like you can just run around there eventually if you want to be good.
So I had no idea that Miami had a rugby team.
Yeah. So it's a Division II's men team. So it's a bunch of grown-ass men that do it because they love it.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, most of us.
So you got to love it.
You have to love it. Yeah, you have to love that. Fucking yourself up. And then it's a drinking culture. I had some of the best parties and stories of my fucking life because of rugby. Yeah. And it's a great culture.
Yeah, that sounds... Yeah, I would never do rugby.
It's violent, man. Yeah, there's something to be said about the motherfucker that goes out there.
I would put on pads and play, but not.
Yeah, no, man. But the women's team, they're just savages. Like anybody that plays rugby, man, woman, child, whatever. Yeah, it's just a culture.
So natural. You know what? You got to rugby and you did the Muay Thai. Wrestling never. Penn State got a wrestling team.
So when I was at Penn State, when I went to Penn State, I was 20. So I just left Miami. I was up there. Martial arts was all I knew. I had no real guidance up there. I just wanted to go to school.
Not even in high school, though?
No, in high school, I just did martial arts, man. And I should have. You know, like I wanted to play football, but I don't know if it was just anti-school spirit, but I didn't have a guidance. Like my older brother was 10 years older. He was doing his own thing. I didn't have like a cousin or somebody that played football. Yeah. My boys were all like doing graffiti or chilling, drawing, you know, bullshit, drinking. But I wish I would have, looking back. Yeah. Oh, I would have loved to play football. I think I would have been a fucking cool running back. I think so.
But I had a cousin that did wrestling, and it was pretty intense. Like I would go to some matches, like, oh, I gotta make weight, throw up.
Well, yeah, that's where they used to wear garbage bags and kids would die.
I was like, yo, what's going on here? Man? So and that's why I find that interesting that you were into all these things, but like wrestling or something like that.
Not for school. I did wrestle. I've I've trained in BJJ, wrestling, Silat, Filipino Kali, Jeet Kune Do, Muay Thai. I was a martial artist through and through. I love the art. That's what I fell in love with. So I have practiced wrestling. Like I can't beat a wrestler in wrestling.
Yeah.
But I've learned from them you learn that.
Saw something on Joe Rogan about 3 or 4 days ago, like a YouTube clip where they're talking about martial arts. And I guess like how outdated it is. And he was like saying like, oh, even like someone like Bruce Lee that, he realized like you come here into the States and they realized like boxing and Jiu Jitsu and stuff like that was a more formidable form of fighting because once to give the right quote, he's like, they realized that once these white boys learned how to box and do other kinds of fighting, martial arts, they wasn't falling for all that bullshit of martial arts. You feel like that?
Yeah. Okay, that's a fair question. It's funny that he mentions Bruce Lee because Bruce Lee was the original mixed martial arts. So that's the truth. Jeet Kune Do in that way and be like water and his concept of fighting was adapt what works for you and make it your own. So to quote Bruce Lee in that, I think Bruce Lee would have done very well now.
Yeah.
But in general, so there's a difference between martial arts and fighting.
Yeah,
and that's why I think a fighter and a martial artist are two different things. Now, when they become one, they're very dangerous.
Yeah.
I mean, George St. Pierre is an example of a guy that's a martial artist who can fight.
Right.
And hands down, literally one of the same thing with Anderson Silva. Now, how things have evolved is martial arts is a good outline. It's a good base. It teaches you to body mastery, understand sports. There's nothing wrong with practicing a kata or bow training because it's still mastery of the body. But you also have to learn what's practical.
Yeah.
Are you really going to do Wing Chun in the ring? No. But are you going to practice body awareness? I promise you Wing Chun and Muay Thai plumbing can help you in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu because it did for me.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's anything wrong with learning both, but it certainly is identifying like the concept of fighting, and it's like having a mechanic and a racer.
Yeah.
A racer that's a mechanic would be a superior racer.
Yeah.
A mechanic and one or the other doesn't, it's okay.
Yeah.
But having both is no problem. Yeah. It's not going to hurt you. And so you just got to know when to use the choices that's going to work well on the streets. Like, I'm not going to fucking sit there and do Kali. I'm literally going to elbow you in the throat and take you and punch
you. Well, that's what they were saying. Like in a street fight, here, with a guy that knows how to fight, martial arts is not going to work.
No, and it's going to hurt. Yeah. And then again, too, like I always say, I don't pick fights in the streets because every dog has their day, and then there's a lot of things involved, man. Street fights is very ugly. I'd fight anybody in the ring.
There's no rules.
Yeah, in the ring, I'll fight anybody. I swear, even if you beat my ass. Like,
yeah,
there's rules. There's a concept of okay, you can hit me a certain amount of times. Yeah. In the streets, fuck, man. Concrete hurts. You might have a lucky swing, just sitting there and
of course, yeah,
it's ugly.
A bad fall.
Yeah.
That's and I was listening to that, and I think that some of the stuff that I have read in the past about Bruce Lee is like his adaptation to fighting. It was always evolving, or like just his studying of like I saw one thing that he would watch Muhammad Ali fights for like hours, just studying his footwork.
Me too.
And how he moved and he was in love. He fell in love with that concept of like movement.
Right, and just a Chinese kid watching Muhammad Ali was like sacrilegious to Kung Fu.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you I was lucky enough to have trained with Danny Nosanto, one of his bigger students, who was also, I think it was in Game of Death. But Danny Nosanto was one of Bruce Lee's students. He was one of our higher ups when I trained with Dwight Woods here in Kendall. But he told me a story once where all these guys were at this seminar, and they're all doing like, fire punch and dragon block. And this was in the 70s. And everyone was getting praise for this, how to block or how to defend against a cross.
Right.
Or a straight punch. And Bruce Lee just did the same thing like 15 times. He just parried once, bang, parried once, bang, parried once, bang. And everyone was pissed. It was like, oh, it's so stupid, whatever. But his concept and his philosophy was, if it works, why make it complicated?
Yeah.
So they used to dog Bruce Lee all the time in those Kung Fu magazines because he was like, what's the point of doing this weird windmill, dragon monkey paw when I could just boom, boom.
Yeah.
That was 50 years ago.
I think his advantage, too, is that he was super fast.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
He was naturally... I don't think he realizes like how naturally gifted he was.
Right.
Because you just can't learn to be that fast.
No. And he's gifted. Yeah. And I was obsessed. That's why I always say, if you put Bruce Lee now, I would give him a year, and I'm sure he would adapt. He would probably do BJJ, Muay Thai, and adapt and overcome and make himself. I'm sure he wouldn't do that movie shit. Everyone thinks he's just gonna try and do like a 1-inch punch on you. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
Trust believe the philosophy. Read the philosophy.
The last Bruce Lee documentary I saw, I guess he was shooting a movie. They were the producers, and I'm not sure if this is the one that he did with Kareem, but. Because because I can't remember that. All right, because I can't remember if Kareem was the one telling the story. Like, they really couldn't believe like this was like a real thing. They're shooting the film, and like these two guys come from like the streets and they challenge him, and he pauses. He's like, "Hey, pause all this. I gotta go handle that."
Yes.
He goes, whoops, and like I think it was Kareem that was basically.
Yeah, I think it's Kareem.
And he was basically saying, "This guy goes out off screen, beats the shit out of them, comes back like if nothing happened. He's like, I'm ready to go. Like we're filming again."
This is a true story.
Yeah.
And Dan would tell me, he would say that what they would do is that they would go, because they were Chinese kids and Asian kids, so to pick fights with Americans was easy.
Yeah.
So they would all go, like 5 or 6 of them, to a bar and go practice what they had just practiced in a street fight.
I guess that's the.
And then sometimes they would get their asses beat and be like, "Okay, boys, like this doesn't work.
We got to reevaluate."
This is true story. Like you can't. That's just toughness.
And I think that's what makes the allure of Bruce Lee. Like that he could really. That shit was not just a movie.
He fought all the time.
And that's what I find amazing about him. It was a guy that like, yo, this is not just movie stuff, man. This is not Jackie Chan. Like,
he applied it.
Yeah,
he applied it.
And no disrespect to Jackie Chan because he does his own stunts.
Sure,
but he's not a real fighter.
Sure, and we understand what movie stuff is. And then somebody wrote the Tao of Jeet Kune Do. That's an actual fighting form, but more importantly, a philosophy.
Yeah, he's a very interesting human being. I even how he did his protein shakes. He was like the first guy to like throw meat in there, and like just like raw meat.
He was doing the muscle stimulation. Things.
He was just very. Imagine, I can only imagine him at this time.
I would,
with where we are in advancements.
That's somebody that I wish I could hear his philosophy now and how things have evolved.
Yeah, I mean, with all the advancements we have now, the training, the different forms of even like physical stuff. Like the way he was already innovating at that time, I can only imagine what he would do with the way the advances have been.
I would say he'd still be on top of the globe in that aspect.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, and I think fighting would be even bigger.
For sure. Oh, because he would still be a face. I mean, we all grew up, and then I think he was one that would adapt. He wouldn't shun MMA. He wouldn't have been like, well, that's not martial arts. I mean, he himself was like, he'd probably be involved in many things. I mean, I'm just assuming here, but just based on his philosophy and his character, I'd still sure he'd be back in any type of fighting.
So you did the martial arts. You got to the black belt?
No, so I did. In Jeet Kune Do, there are no belts.
Okay, I didn't know
that. Because Bruce Lee didn't believe in that. We had shirts as far as ranking, because Americans, we thrive on that.
So is the belt thing an Americanized thing?
Yes.
Okay.
For the most part,
that.
In Thai,
we gotta like label something.
We need it. We need what's affirmation.
Yeah, exactly.
Same thing in Muay Thai. So we had a color shirt. So we had white shirt and black shirt. It took me 3 years to get my black shirt. That's it. There was just more of like experience. Under TBA, Thai Boxing Association, Wesley Carroll was a friend, a mentor, and my coach. There was no ranking. It was irrelevant. But now if you go to most schools, you get the paijads, like the really cool little ropes on your arms. There's colors or your shorts or your Mongkong.
Yeah.
I had to earn mine after 3 fights. So that's how I got mine. But everyone's different. I didn't care about ranking. I cared about being good.
Yeah, which is what Bruce Lee cared about. Which makes sense. Yeah, he didn't believe in belts.
No, because he came from that system or the ranking systems.
So even over there, they didn't have that.
No, I'm not 100% sure how they rank Kung Fu in Asia or how they used to. I'm aware that for the most part, belt systems are more primarily an Americanized concept.
Yeah. And do you know how many it is before black?
I don't know. I'm pretty sure,
20,
like I said,
25?
I'm sure like in maybe classic traditional, like Shotokans and stuff like that, there's probably some sort of ranking system.
Yeah.
But I don't know, in the ancient concepts, I'm sure there wasn't. I don't know how many. Everything's different. Look, like Taekwondo has like 50 colors. BJJ only has like 4. Shotokan has a few. And now I think most of that thing has just been almost capitalized, where it's just like the more rankings you have and stripes, it just keeps people going in the business.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's something to be said. I know for the most part, the black belt ranking system around the world, at least outside of Jeet Kune Do and Muay Thai, I am not aware of the ranking systems around the world.
Yeah.
But in Jeet Kune Do and Thai, there was officially no ranking.
I think now, what I see a lot on social media, at least, and that's my knowledgeable information now. I see like what's really popular is Jiu Jitsu. It's like everywhere.
Of course,
I'm seeing it everywhere.
It's fun.
Yeah,
it's fun to wrestle with your friends. I always tease on BJJ.
So it's more of a form of wrestling.
Yeah, I'm sure my BJJ buddies will hear this and give me shit, but I'll fight you any day. But
you
just play with them.
Was and I'm not too familiar with fighting, but I do remember this one fighter. You remember Shamrock?
Sure.
That was Jiu Jitsu, right?
So he called it shoot wrestling. That was his claim to fame. Shoot wrestling is a type of wrestling that involves grappling and takedowns.
Which is somewhat like Jiu Jitsu.
Sure.
Right?
it's hard to compare. I mean, everything comes from a similar root, you know? So BJJ is its own discipline, very much a grappling, but it does have, you know, locks and takedowns and different aspects to it. Shoot wrestling was a type of, it's like, imagine wrestling with actual locks.
Right.
You know, so most wrestlers don't really know how to do like an armbar. So shoot wrestling was on top of that with some strikes. And
I remember him being a badass.
He was, because nobody knew how to fucking shoot wrestle.
Yeah.
And he was an athlete.
Yeah,
And he's a crazy person. He's still around hosting fights.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. He's still in the business.
Yeah.
But he was a savage.
Like I said, if you get into these kind of fightings or anything, it's a really big passion. Like, you don't leave it.
No, getting hit in the face and fighting is...
you got to like it.
You have to love it, yeah.
You got to have a little screw somewhere.
Sure.
A little bit.
And then when you get hit, you loosen them even more.
Yeah,
so you're fucking...
So voluntarily... you know, Yuli Diaz, he's like a bare knuckle fighter.
Yuli,
and
local.
And we're hoping to have him on the podcast. We've talked to him, working on scheduling. I just went to his first boxing match. Not his first, but my first boxing match. And I saw him the other day. He knocked out a guy like in 13 seconds.
He's a beast, and he's a grown-ass man.
But to get into a ring, just to think like... And I want to save that conversation for him, but we'll have it with me and you. Sure. But like, if I think like... And this is kind of what I want to get to that. How do you get to a point where you fight all these forms of fightings, all these type of fights you can think of, right? And you say, oh, you know what? I want to fight bare knuckle. We're going to go that route, right? And how did you even go into like all this type of fighting? How did you go into Muay Thai, right? Because for me, it's like, bro, you could have done boxing. I would have rather that than bare knuckle. I mean, there's all these kinds of fights I would rather do than getting punched in the face bare knuckle.
Right. From my understanding, Yuli was a pro boxer too.
Yes.
I also think there's more, I'm not speaking for him, but there's more money in bare knuckle.
Oh, yeah?
And I think for these guys, not only more money, more promotion, because it's trying to come up. So they give their fighters, and I think there's a challenge. And I think anyone that steps into the ring, that's why fighting will always be my love. I read a book a long time ago called Fighter's Heart.
Okay.
It's excellent. And there was something, I'm not a religious man, but there's something that he said that was, he's beautiful. Is a lot of people, when they step into the ring, they say that they find God. And that concept, I think, comes from, you really do have to face the concept of life and death. This is the only thing as close as we can get into actual physical battle.
Yeah.
You know, many people don't choose a soldier life or, you know, swinging a sword. But when you're in there and you are basically fighting for your life because no one hits you there friendly, it's not a sparring match.
But you think there's an intent to kill?
I would try to hit that guy as hard as I fucking can. If I killed him, that would be awful. But I wanted to end that fight so fast.
But your goal is also just to get him down. Not necessarily, right?
It depends. You know, you can't hit a person... You know, like when you're really trying to hurt somebody, it's a killer instinct. It's not a hurting instinct.
Okay.
It's like
so you're not even thinking about that.
You want to hurt them so bad that it's like, I hate to say it, but like you want to end their life. That's how hard you're hitting them, but you know you're not because it's a sport.
Yeah.
So there's this weird thin line.
They're also like a well-seasoned, trained athlete.
Yeah, and you're not hitting a fucking old lady,
regular
you know what I mean?
Yeah,
there's something to be said, but
they're prepared.
When you pull the trigger,
yeah,
it's like a gun. You know, when you're shooting, let's say you're shooting a target, you also have that really understanding that there may come a day where this bullet will take a life.
Yeah.
So when you pull the trigger, that's how you train. You know, you're not training to be an asshole. When you throw a punch in the ring, you have a real clear understanding that you want to end this fight as fast as possible, and that's going to take that killer instinct. So you hit them with the intent to, like, quote unquote, end them right there. You have to train that way, unless you're just an amazing monster. Right. And again, that's different sports, right? Boxing, you got points, but there's a couple hits where you're like, hey, in the volume of this, I'm going to end this guy's life.
I got to feel it, yeah.
I think a lot of us, and I'll speak for myself, but after knowing the community for so many years, I had a whole podcast about this, but it's also philosophy. I think certain people are born with like a warrior code mentality, with this kind of have to prove it to themselves attitude.
Yeah.
Whether it's just physical endeavors or, you know, mental or business ventures. And for some of us, physical catharsis is very important. And the aspect of violence is the only way we can actually conceptualize our worth.
Right.
And if we're not doing something physically arduous, it's like, I'll speak for myself, it's like, I'm not worth it if I can't prove it to myself that I have what it takes.
Yeah.
And that have what it takes attitude is, I think, what steps you into the ring.
Yeah.
I've never been a pro fighter. I think eventually when you become a professional, there's more than just that. You're making a livelihood on that. You have to have, you know, promotion. You got to kill and hurt, but you can't get too hurt. And that's a whole nother conversation that is short. But I think ultimately that's what steps you into that ring, like what steps you into the pitch or on the basketball court. It's a competitive drive, but violence, I mean violence literally, not this whole concept of choose violence because you wake up to like, you know, whatever. But there is that kind of cathartic, have to prove it to yourself by physical like ventures that you have to feel worth. And it's self-worth. Yeah. And then there's also something to be said about the glory and the ego and the selfishness of standing with your arm raised in the ring. It's like you feel like a gladiator. Let's be real. We compete for glory. I compete for glory. And then, of course, for other things. And that's just the selfishness of the athlete.
And it's funny that you say that because I want to touch on a point. I watch a lot of movies, right? Nice. And I know these are not real. But you see movies like Rocky.
Love it.
You see movies like, what's the movie with Jimmy Braddock, The Fighter, where they go through the Great Depression?
With the guy from The Gladiator.
Yeah, exactly. But it's a great movie.
Cinderella Man.
Cinderella Man.
Yes.
Right. Okay. So do you think,
based on a true story?
Yes, exactly. So do you think that there's ever in terms of the fighting, even when you fought like Muay Thai and stuff like that, you think that the will of a man can in this because we know in some others in like football and basketball, your will is one thing, but your skill is another, right?
Sure.
You think that in fighting, the will of a man can outduel the skill of a man?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. It's. I would
say,
or
is that just movie?
No. And I would say that there's some sports that allow you to express that. Strongman being one of them, right? Or maybe football as well, where skill certainly is the backbone of what you need to do. Skill will always allow you to express your will more. Yeah. The more skill you have, the more your ability you'll have to express your will. Yeah. But ultimately, you know, your body will follow the line of courage. It'll follow. That's why we have the saying, the will to win. My old coach told me one time we lined up, and it's one of our mottos that we talked about. He lined us up after class, and he goes, you know, I never forget this conversation. I'm maybe 26, and he goes, everyone tell me what they think their greatest weapon is or greatest aspect is. And we all said something. When it came to me, I used to have a fucking monster kick. So I was like, that was like my best thing. I wish I had better hands, but yeah. And he goes, I go, oh, my kick. And he looks at me and he goes, no. And I was like, that what, you know, okay. My conditioning. And he goes, your will to win. He goes, that was probably the greatest compliment I've ever been getting in my entire life. He goes, Mikey, because he used to call me Mikey. People in the community call me Mikey. He goes, your ability to never give up and your will to win is superior to anything you'll ever throw. Yeah. And that changed my life.
I also feel like that's a will to survive.
Right.
And you don't want to get fucking demolished by that guy.
And to me, like the will to win, my philosophy is, you know, winning is obviously a perspective thing. Yeah. What you think winning is not what I think winning is. Right, Same thing between winning and victory, the two different ideas. But that triggered something in me. And that will, I think, more often than not, will save a man's life than anything else. You know, it's like... That's
like that people that believe in moral wins.
Sure.
I don't see a problem with that. Like if you outlasted where you were supposed to last, I think there's that's a victory in itself.
And it's funny because there's also a counter argument. There's a movie called 13th Warrior. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's one of my favorite fucking movies of all time.
Sounds like I have.
You got it. It's a classic. But in one of them,
it's not with Jet Li, right?
No. 13th Warrior is about Vikings.
Okay.
It's with Antonio Banderas, which is funny. He plays like
he's a Viking.
He plays a guy from like the Middle East.
Okay.
But there's a counter argument where they ask the guy and goes, you know, luck will often save a man before courage does. But if his courage holds, and that's actually one of my favorite sayings, luck will often save a man if his courage holds. Meaning if you have the will and you keep proceeding, luck will find you and save you, right? So skill, will, luck. And will is so fundamentally preeminent in fighting. Yeah. Because it will find you and it'll help you win. It's a one-on-one too, right? Yeah. You don't have 50 other people trying to bang your head in.
So now that we got Muay Thai, we got the rugby stuff. We know that obviously you took some dinks and bruises on rugby, 2.5 years. So then, how did that how did the powerlifting thing start? How do we go into that?
So I was younger
because I feel like everything you've done puts a strain in your body.
So yeah.
So it feels like at the end, like so far, like you were like Muay Thai,
everything that kills me, yeah.
Yeah, and then it was like, that's it, I was defeated. Then rugby, 2.5 years, I was banged up. And then, but you know what? Now I'm gonna go into powerlifting, and this is gonna like
even worse. Yeah.
So we're gonna definitely put even more strain on the body.
Yep.
So it feels like you got worn out by the other two.
That's a good question. I don't know if physically was the wear, although I know because you know I broke a lot of things in rugby. I had 28 stitches to the face, concussions.
Wow. Yeah.
And that was never the reason why. In the sense of I didn't want. It's not that I didn't want that anymore. Is that it took its toll. Yeah, and exactly. I had to make a decision.
Obviously, yeah.
So I was young and dumb, and I was actually once I got done with fighting, I not too many years after I opened the gym, but I was already playing rugby. I was training I was a competitive strongman, and I was a competitive powerlifter at the same time. So I would train strongman Saturday mornings and then go play rugby on like rugby matches and then go out drinking like an asshole. And I would do this all simultaneously because I was young and I had the energy. I was 29, 30. I loved it. But eventually, like you said, it just took its toll where I was like, what do I really want to be?
I feel like the rugby training and strongman training are like counterproductive.
Not at all, actually. It depends on the intensity. To me, strongman training is probably the superior way of training in life because it still has the fundamentals like bench, squat, deadlift. But you're also training in all sorts of plane. We had an interview with Stuart McGill, who's a spine specialist. He said, one of the best ways to train is strongman because you're picking up odd objects, you're turning, you're carrying, you're moving weight.
Right.
It's just the intensity. If you're trying to be the strongest human being on the planet, that's unhealthy in anything you do. But if you train like picking up a sandbag, doing farmers, carrying something odd like a keg, this is just life skills.
Like, yeah, I was about to say it's like manual labor.
Yeah, it's just life skills. It's just like telling a farmer what he's doing is wrong. Yeah, it's just heavier and things that are more
pushing
practical.
your
right.
Yeah, your
so
limit.
I did it. Now, what's counterproductive is to train competitive strongman and competitive rugby. That doesn't make any sense.
That's what I'm saying.
Bad idea.
Yeah,
that's and maybe it's just semantics.
I also feel like you're taking away from your conditioning.
For sure, I'm taking away everything. I'm just it's will that was carrying me and stubbornness and stuff like that. But eventually, I had to. Well, what did I really love? And I loved rugby, but I didn't love it as much as strongman. Yeah. That was the closest thing to fighting. First of all, I'm not a big team sports guy. I enjoy it, but I love solo stuff. I just like the responsibility. I love the glory. I love the challenge. I love the isolation of it.
Well, can I say this?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like when you say that, it's like saying rugby, there's like a plateau, right? Oh. You can win, right? But then after winning, it's like strongman, you continue.
Sure.
To push and push. It's like you want to see how, like, there's never there's never a line, right? And then if sometimes, like me and Paul were talking about this, like even if sometimes you get to that point where you're like not surpassing it, you know that if you continue to work, you're gonna get to that next level. There's always another.
That's a very good point, and that's a great observation. The biggest W you can get in rugby, although you have great stories and you can have personal adventures and experiences, is the W. In strength sports, it's the numbers.
The numbers,
and that particular thing. And eventually, obviously the journey is all that better. But when you say, hey, man, I deadlifted 700 or I picked up or I pulled a truck, you're just addicted to that.
Yeah. It never stops, too.
Never.
Because you're like, I 720? Well, now I want to get to 725, 730.
And that's obviously the slippery slope of the strength athlete. And it makes a coach's life very difficult, but the athlete does what he does. But yeah, there was something I could chase. And I felt really good at it. And I enjoyed it. And I had this kind of, the same feeling I had when I would fight, very close to what I fought, was you're pushing yourself to the limit by yourself with something that's actually trying to fucking kill you. And it's inhuman. You're not supposed to lift this weight and pull this thing or pick up this thing. And I liked it. I liked the culture.
Boulders.
You're not supposed to, not like that. And I fell in love with it. And then powerlifting, I had 2 meets. I enjoyed it, but it was just boring to me. I like coaching it. It was not enough for me. And, it really was like going from, soccer to rugby. I don't even care about soccer that much anymore, even though as a Colombian kid, that's all we have. But it's like once you taste that ability, it's very hard to be normal, quote unquote.
I feel like for the strongman stuff, conditioning is important too, man. Because like when I saw Paul do like I grab one, I'm thinking, man, like you got to go grab one boulder, pick it up, then lift it up onto the thing, and it gets higher progressively.
Yes.
And then you're like, that's a lot of conditioning, bro. Because it doesn't matter how strong you are if you're tired. Like, right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, and look, so I like to live in the gray area, but I do say a lot of things that are black and white, and I know when, like I said, rugby's superior, I think strongman is the superior strength sport in the world.
Yeah.
That's just my opinion.
Right.
But also living the experiences. You have to have aerobic condition, anaerobic condition. You have to have maximal strength endurance. You have to be cardiovascularly fit. You have to have low body fat. Because even though you think everyone's big and fat, on the contrary, you're talking about the super, super heavyweights, which now the world has changed. Most of those guys are pretty lean, 300-something, 20 pounds, and they almost have like a 3-pack, like 4-pack. Like, come on.
Yeah.
I compete at 105 kilo, which is 231. Most of those guys look like professional rugby or professional running backs. Like we're all just shortish, stocky, very athletic people. You have to be able to move fast. You have to turn. You have to throw. You have to express your strength in sagittal and different turning planes. You're not a stationary lifter. So you explore everything athletically you can. You also have to, like I said, cardiovascularly fit. So you have a long day in the sun. So you have to have a conditioned ability.
So I know, like, in terms of like bench, a shorter person has an advantage.
Shorter arm person, sure.
Yeah, exactly. So in strongman, there's a bigger person because you got to carry all these things. Like,
that's a great question.
Is there a bigger advantage to a taller guy? Or?
Taller guys will always have some advantage.
Yeah.
Especially like for loading or throwing, but may have a disadvantage on things like farmers and deadlift. So the sport typically equals itself out. Obviously, if you're very, very tall or very, very short, if you're on different sides of the spectrum, you might have extreme advantages or disadvantages.
Right.
But for the most part, let's say I'll speak for my class specifically. 105 guys are typically between 5'9" and like 6'2".
Right.
The taller 231 is probably going to have a lot of advantages when it comes to loading the stone, throwing a bag over, but would have a disadvantage for things like me, like a car deadlift or a deadlift in general, or farmers, or picking something up and running with it. Yeah. As a shorter guy, I can move quicker. I also am shorter and I probably expend less energy. I'd have less calorie concept on that, but the sport has a way of equaling itself out.
Yeah.
Very, very close to many things. It's not like basketball where the short guy is just, you're phenoms.
Yeah.
For the most part, if you're not over 6'2", 6'3", you're like, unless you're just very, very skilled, it sucks. But strongman has an interesting way of, it's so eclectic in its ability to express strength that it balances itself out. But I would say that the average to taller person, I think, has an average or will always have an advantage in most things.
And I'm gonna tell you what I like about strongman from my research that I've done, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but from what I gather is what I like is that it's not meant to be pretty. Like it's not a pretty thing, right? And that doesn't mean disrespect to anybody that does like training to be like their physique and what's it called? Bodybuilder, right? Like when you're just trying to like get the veins and because that's a whole discipline in itself. You gotta eat real discipline. You gotta train discipline.
Brutal.
It's brutal. So there's a lot of respect in that too. But what I like about the strongman stuff is like it's not meant to be pretty, man. It's just meant to just challenge yourself to get bigger, stronger, and do these obstacles that like you said, like you shouldn't be doing.
Right, and I appreciate that. There is a difference between performance sports and aesthetic sports.
Right.
I fell in love. I'm a chubby kid. Like I've been a fat kid growing up my whole life. So aesthetics was a cool goal. And I'm not saying I'm like, I hate myself. I'm not a fat piece of shit. It's just chasing the six pack is not bad. I think if you can be very aesthetically pleasing and be in strength sports, it's just not your primary goal.
Yeah.
I wouldn't sacrifice performance for aesthetics. Yeah. That's all.
Yeah.
I think you could still be like me and my peers. We all look decent for what we do in the sport because the philosophy's changed. But I really don't care if I have a quad, definition as opposed to if I can fucking lift up a house.
Yeah.
And how I perform. And that's been the biggest thing for me. Now, the philosophy is, and it's to agree with you as well, is always to be how far we can push our bodies for the sake of performance and doing feats of strength that are unnatural or, history made, but never with the misconception of letting our bodies fall apart. I always say that the performance athlete has a good physique on the consequence of their hard work. And it's you work hard enough and you eat correctly and you train hard and you look good. It's because it's secondary to what you should be doing, But I'm not going to eat tilapia and broccoli for 4 months to look shredded because even a bodybuilder would tell you that their performance is falling, their life is falling, like they feel terrible, but they have their goals to get on stage and look like a fucking see-through piece of paper, which is amazing, and we have to pick up a fucking 600-pound bar.
Yeah.
So in aspects, I do respect both, but my choice will always be performance.
Yeah. Let's talk about your first, because I was fortunate enough to see Paul's first strongman. Let's talk about your first competition. How was that? How did you navigate through that? Was it tough?
My first strongman comp?
Yeah.
This was in 2013.
Because from what I understand, you didn't do it here.
No. So
because
Paul's first comp, Miami's Baddest, is my show in the sense of hosting.
And he said it was one of the first.
Yeah,
like, that really didn't exist here.
No, in Miami, no.
Yeah,
we had no strongman.
So that's why I was assuming that yours was not here.
Yeah, no. I hosted one of the first, probably the first strongman. Not, I'll say one of the first because I think back in the 80s they might have had one with like Columbo and these guys. But the first Strongman Corporation Strongman show was in Miami, was mine.
Right.
As well as the USPA powerlifting competition, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. But my first strongman competition was in Tampa Bay Strongest Man at the time.
Okay.
This was in 2013, and I was still competing in rugby, so I was playing whatever, and I even invited my rugby mates to go see me. I didn't take it as seriously in the sense of I didn't know what the sport was going to demand of me. But I trained very, very hard.
Right.
But at the same time, I was still going to rugby practices and throwing and stuff. I was very nervous.
So your body was going through a lot.
A lot.
Yeah.
I forgot my belt. And actually, Paul had his belt in the trunk. And I was able to use his belt. I mean, I always, at the beginning, I always forgot something. Elbow sleeves, knee sleeves.
Right.
I forgot my fucking belt, which is such a rookie move. And it was in a parking lot at the Quaker Steak and Lube in Tampa Bay, in Clearwater, actually.
Okay.
We started at 6 p.m., and I got my trophy at 1:15 in the morning.
Oh, my God.
Because it was just so long. It was a great show in the sense of the cool stuff, like a truck pull. We did an arm-over-arm pull of a
do you
trailer.
have to do every single?
Yeah, you have to do 5 events.
Right? Yeah.
It was 5 events, and I'll never forget it.
It's like a total point of...
Yep, that was my novice comp, and I competed, and I won. I won my first 5 shows in a row.
Wow, that's great.
It was great.
No wonder you enjoyed it so much. You're like, I think I'm pretty good at this thing. Yeah,
that was probably the last time I won
Rugby,
shit.
we're done with you.
After that, I was like, this is great.
Yeah.
And I had a great time. There was a lot of great competitors, but I remember just that feeling of elation. I won a really cool helmet, which I still have, and that was my first competition. I was just in love. I had no fear of anything. I felt athletic. I loved the cheers in the crowd and people coming up to me and being like, man, that's fucking insane what you did. I was like, yes,
that's what's great about sports in general, right? The people that are cheering you on, they understand how hard it is what you're doing because they can't do it.
No, right.
Right? Like I'll sit there and I'll watch that shit and I'll be like, bro, listen, I admire that shit because I know I can't do that.
Right. The same thing. It's like when I watch my first Highland Games, which I do now as well every once in a while, and I see these guys throw these things. I'm just like, man, I'll go up to them after. I'm like, that is beautiful what you just did. Because, you're right. You
understand.
Can't do it. Yeah. You want to do it.
Yeah, or you want to get, like, if you're training for that, you want to get to that point. There's an admiration there. Yeah,
yes,
I think that's...
And that was a beautiful feeling. And taking first in my first comp, and it was awesome. And I'll never forget that.
So do you remember what the events were?
I sure do. It was an Apollon wheel axle clean and press. So it was an axle bar with these 2 giant wheels that you have to clean and press overhead. It was a car deadlift, which was a lighter car, but a lot of reps. I think it was like 20. I got like
Are these
20.
cars gutted or they're fully...
You pull them not from the motor side, from the back side, and then they load plates.
Like it's got the seats and everything.
Yeah, it's the whole car.
Full weight,
Somebody parks the car and you get these handles and you car deadlift. I think I had like 20-something reps. So it was light, but it was brutal.
20 reps?
24, I think, if I'm not mistaken. And I got second by 1 rep. But it was like a cardio. I mean, you're...
Yeah, but even like a light car is still like 1,000 pounds.
Sucks.
Right?
Yeah, it sucks. You know,
at a minimum.
Yeah, and you're lifting at an angle, and it was terrible. Then after that, it was an arm-over-arm truck pull, which you pulled a trailer that holds cards. We pulled that with a rope.
Yeah.
And then the last event was stone, like a stone ladder, like when they load it on the platform.
Yeah. That's actually my favorite one for some reason.
Me too. Until I tore my fucking bicep tendon.
Yeah, I don't know what it is about grabbing that thing and then just... I just like watching it, yeah.
It's primal.
Yeah.
It's primal. It's like picking up a heavy rock, just so fucking badass.
And then like getting it every single... How many typically is it? Four levels?
It depends. Typically 4 to 5. Anywhere between 48 to 56, sometimes 52 to 60. It depends. It all depends on the show. That's the thing with Strongman. There's no general standard.
Yeah.
It's whatever the motherfucker wants to decide to do that day.
Yeah,
and you just have to be up, game for it, knowing the events a few months in advance.
Did you throw up?
No, I didn't.
No.
I was actually pretty good.
Okay.
I take a mean shit before, but that's about it.
Are you eating before these things?
I eat.
Or are you on an empty stomach?
A decent breakfast.
Okay.
During the events, back then, I didn't have a strong understanding of nutrition. So I would eat like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, Skittles, trash food, Twinkies, just for high glycemic stuff. As I do now, and I always tell my athletes now professionally, it's like you will perform as good as you eat. So if you eat trash, it's probably not good for you. So we have I do protein powders and powdered carbohydrates. I do cleaner burning fasts like fructose and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily promote trash food because now the philosophy of the sport and the respect for it has evolved as well as the nutrition understanding. So do you eat Skittles sometimes? Sure. When your glucose drops and you need that spike in energy because you're literally fainting almost and the brain runs on glucose, yeah. But for the most part, it's a different type of stuff. So I would eat like a good breakfast back then. Now I'll wake up and have a clean source of protein, like maybe lean beef or chicken and rice. Lots of hydration. It's mostly hydration with sodium and micronutrients in there and EAAs. And then, of course, I'll have my powder protein, powder carbohydrates in between because I don't like to eat. I feel like I'm going to puke.
Right.
Or take a poop, which is even worse. And I feel great after. I just keep feeding my body through liquids.
Is it are before these events, are you allowed to take like anything that gives you adrenaline?
So,
like, how do they even like?
So if you're not on drugs, because if there's also the steroid aspect of Strongman, and there's also
which is what I want to get at. Yeah,
it's fine. You could ask anything. I don't give a fuck.
No, but like if let's just say if I I'm about to compete. There's something that gives me an edge, like something that gets me more focused. Or
so
are you allowed that?
If you're thinking about like a nootropic now or anything caffeinated, when it comes to the legal spectrum of things or the spectrum of things, I think the best thing you can do ammonias, like the little things that you crack in there, and it's kind of like a nervous system. Like you smell, like when people faint, those little ammonia tablets.
Yeah,
you'll see that, or smelling salts. It's
yeah.
basically a way of like. It causes pain in that like your nose spectrum, causing you to take deep breaths and almost spike you. It can really, it's like an adrenaline dump, basically, or adrenaline spike. There's that. There's obviously things like halotessin, and there's things like you can take pills to actually get you very, very aggressive when it comes to that. Again, I'm not promoting the use of drugs in the sport, but it happens, and these things are things that people take. For the most part, though, it really comes from, and I'll be always flat out, whether you're clean or you're not, it'll come with, you just have to visualize and really have practiced the event. You can take all the things you want.
Yeah.
I've seen people take everything and nothing.
And nothing happens.
It's all performance.
So, and you know what? I'm glad you said that. Just a few weeks ago, they were talking about Barry Bonds and the whole steroids thing on ESPN. And because they're, the whole Aaron Judge thing going on.
Yeah.
That was coming up, and then they were talking about like this whole steroid. And somebody brought up an amazing point. I don't really care for baseball too much, but I personally didn't care about these guys that took steroids, right?
Sure.
I still think there's a huge skill to hitting a baseball.
Yes.
Right? I don't care how much steroids. There's still a humongous skill. Hand-eye coordination, swing, all that stuff is a major part of that. Someone brought up like a major point that I thought like completely kills the argument. They were like, the report that came out that had all the players in that era that was taking steroids and all that shit. And this guy was like, you know what? There's like 300, 400 something players on that list. Barry Bonds the only one that can hit that many, and they all took the same shit.
Yep.
And so at that point, it proves a point that like, he might have done it. Yep. But the skill, the technique, the power to hit that ball and do it. He's one out of 3 or 4. What? Because he didn't say one, but he also said like what? Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa. He goes, that's fine, but that's like 5 guys out of 400 guys that were all doing the same thing. Only these guys achieved those kind of numbers.
Right.
So it lets you know that like the skill still prevails.
Yes.
The enhancement.
And then also when you talk about enhanced athletes, and it's a very touchy subject for most people, and often people just take it in a sensitive sense. Training and everything that revolves around the drugs is going to be always and for always will be the most primary thing.
Yeah.
Skill, will, discipline, the ability to show up. Does it facilitate that? Sure. Does the drugs help you get up in the morning? Absolutely not. But if you're recovering better because of the drugs, are you more willing to go? Yes.
Yeah.
That being said, you're also training harder. So you're also hurting yourself. It's like adding octane fuel. It's like now you're running on jet fuel. You're going faster, but you're burning brighter. And I always tell, it doesn't matter. This is all sports. Any sport. Yeah, exactly. And it comes with its consequences and it comes with its choice. I always tell my young guys, I'm like, don't even fucking look at that.
Yeah.
You have to build your base and skill set, especially in a sport that's highly skilled in like baseball but strongman is also a very high skill set sport, despite the fact, like you said, I love it because it's like savagery. It's like an organized chaos. Yeah. You still have to practice the skill of an odd object. That will and that stuff won't necessarily be facilitated with drugs because eventually it will bite you in the ass. And that's something that in our sport has a stigma because it's easy to point the finger at these animals than to literally 80% of ball athletes that are all on drugs. Yeah. Whether you play baseball, football, basketball, you're all on drugs. Yeah. It's just easy to pass the test, but the feats of strength will always come down to, do you have what it takes? Yeah. And that can be a slippery slope for many people, but the will, and that skill set to express it will always be the primary source of victory. Yeah. Always. I've seen it. Trust me. I know champions that have not touched a fucking drug and are the most superior athletes I've ever seen. And I know guys that are roided to the fucking eyelids who suck dick. Yeah. I'm like, you're trash. You're just inflated with this stuff. And I've seen it all. I've been in this business for 15 years. So it always comes down to the character of the person.
All right. So you won your first 5 events.
Yes.
That's freaking awesome.
That was great. Back
Are all the events pretty much the same in terms of like how they
not really
not the events but like the events but the challenges
in a sense. So there's always a pressing, there's always a pulling, there's always a loading, there's always a carry.
It's just how they go about it.
Yeah, fifth. There's always that because those are kind of the baselines of it. When I did a seminar back in the day when I defined strongman is that there's always a press, ground to overhead in some capacity. There's always a pull off the floor. You will always carry weight, and you will always load a weight. Stone load, keg load, sandbags. Right. The fifth event typically comes to either the promoter's choice or something like in a sports specificity, a keg throw or something very akin to our sports, like something that only happens in strongman, whether it's like a sandbag carry for distance, something to express that. And that's typically how most shows are divided.
Okay.
Those are what we consider feats of strength. Picking something up and putting it over your head, hard. Putting something off the floor, difficult. Moving weight, very difficult. Yeah. Loading something on something. These are the primal movements, the primary movements of strongman. And it also involves static strength, and then those are specified in different ways, whether it's how heavy you can do it, how many reps you can do it, the distance, the speed, the transition of stuff. Again, the multifaceted, for time, for distance, the multifaceted aspects of the sport is crazy.
Yeah.
And you have to train that. That's why typically it takes years, unless you're very, very gifted. It takes years to build this. Years to do this.
Let's get into where you're at now, right?
Sure.
Did winning those 5 events lead you to saying, I want to open up this gym?
So
was it already open at that point?
Good question. I was already open at that point. So when I stopped fighting, I got into I was doing social working. I used to work with senior citizens. That was my job. That was like my first psychology-based job. That was my major. Sometime during that time, I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I started training people. My mom's a teacher in the sense that she's a cake decorator, but a teacher in that world. I was just in my genetics to teach, and I fell in love with coaching. I worked at 24 Hour Fitness like every other fucking trainer, and then I opened up the gym in 2012. And at that time, I didn't call myself a strongman gym until I competed. I thought it was like blasphemy.
Yeah.
So in 2013, I had my first competition. I also had my first strongman competition. So then I'm like, okay.
So it was a powerlifting gym at that time?
It was a strength gym. That's all I call it, strength. And then I competed in powerlifting and strongman in the same year in 2013. Then I said, Miami, Battle Axe Gym, the strongman gym in Miami, because it was, and it is. It's the only fucking strongman gym, like purely.
Yeah.
And that was kind of a claim to fame for a little bit, and still is in a sense. But then, I won the first 5. I was hooked. Well, then, of course, came the reality. Once you're the bigger fish in that pond, and you got to the bigger pond, and you're the small fish, 7th and 5th and 3rd and 15th at Nationals, 20th at Nationals, and it was just a battle. It becomes a battle. And it's like what you got to do for the day. At the time, I dropped powerlifting. I dropped rugby, and I started focusing heavily on trying to be as strong as I can. I won Florida's Strongest Man in 2014. That same year, I had a powerlifting. It was silly. I did the Nationals, powerlifting meet, and I won Florida's Strongest. Things that look back at time, which is cool, but rough on the body. And then I stuck with that. And now where I am now, which I'm 38 now, and things are a little bit different on the body. I tried to compete last year in Florida's Strongest Man, but December 1st, I tore my tricep tendon. So I had a tricep tendon rupture right off the bone.
During competition?
Training for competition. It was sucked because that was like the 3rd tendon I tore. And it set me back big time. And then I've always been into hiding games, the guy with the kilts.
I actually been watching a lot of that stuff.
Fucking love that stuff.
It looks pretty cool.
I've always done that in and out. And that was, since I had one arm in a sling and my right arm was fine, I started throwing.
That's got to be the easiest thing you've done on your body, right?
Easiest on my body.
Yeah.
Not the easiest.
Not the easiest to do it. That's not what I mean. Just the easiest on your body.
Yeah. Yes. I competed 3 times in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Because that's normal.
I saw the videos. They look pretty cool.
It's normal. Yeah, you could do that.
I've never seen something like that, to be honest.
It's so fun.
So it was a new introduction to something that I've never seen before. Yeah.
Explore it,
I thought it was pretty cool.
Explore it. It's a beauty. And when you see it in person and you see these guys throw a 56-pound weight for like 30, 40 feet, it's just, when you pick it up, you're humbled. It's like pick up a 50-pound dumbbell at the gym and think, man, how far can I throw this? Maybe 10 feet.
Yeah.
And, with the chain, you're throwing it. But those things all started correlated. And right now, it's just I had 2 surgeries last year. I had a meniscectomy. There's a slight tear. And then I had the rupture. So I became a little imbalanced. I lost a lot of strength throwing. So right now I'm just doing bodybuilding 4 times a week. And I mean bodybuilding in the sense of I'm not a bodybuilder. I'm practicing the art.
Yeah.
And then on the weekends I do strongman with the intent of competing again, but not yet.
Yeah, you're still like a recovery.
I got to get my shit together. Yeah.
So let me ask you this, and I think this is an important question to ask. we're now this past year, right? We just celebrated the 10th year anniversary of the Battle Axe.
Hey,
right?
Yes, we did.
So here's a question that comes to mind for me. How have you seen it grown in these 10 years? Not just the gym, but the sport itself from when you first got into it to where we're at now. So how has the gym grown in the past 10 years, and how has it gone from year 1 to year 10, and how has the sport changed since you've been in it from year 1 to year 10?
Well, it's a great question. So year 1 strongman, this was 10 years ago, and I wouldn't consider myself an OG in the sport. I was trained by that. But 10 years in the sport really has opened my eyes to the sport has evolved both biomechanically and mentally into a higher sense of self and respect. It's no longer just a bunch of people lifting weights and trying to be savages. I remember it was just always heavy all the time without any kind of understanding of, recovery and like what we're doing to our bodies biomechanically in the sense of decay and form and technique and structure, linear progressions. So as far as the science space, we have adapted things from powerlifting, bodybuilding, and muscle recovery, and started implementing that in something dynamic.
Kind of like Bruce Lee.
Yeah,
take everything
and make it make sense, right? In that aspect, I think we have attracted a lot of athletes from other sports who have brought that as far as coaching is concerned. It has brought with itself a lot of bullshit. I think that the sport has also brought a lot of people who are dramatic and fucking making shit that shouldn't be. As anything else, as everything gets popular, we will always want it to be a small blue collar sport, but you can't expect it to be like that forever because social media has made people like Brian Shaw and these guys, Hafthor Bjornsson, has brought a lot of spotlight to the sport, which is great because now people are getting the respect that they deserve. It also comes with the bullshit, but for the most part, it's good to see this being as like a freak show to being a respected sport of feats of strength, male and female. There's also been a spike in female competitors, which has given the opportunity for women to show their strength and see that these women are legendary in their ability to do things that are inhuman.
Right.
Into any capacity, man or woman.
Yeah, they're also strong.
Right. They don't have to be excluded from the community. Exactly. Even though they weren't, we were very welcoming of women, but they was always shunned upon. To see a girl lift a rock was like, ugh. And we were like, oh, that's badass. Keep doing it. And that has come with a more shows, more opportunity for people to come up. It's not weird to do. There's more gyms. There's more implements, more fabricators. I remember my first circus dumbbell was 2 propane tanks that were empty, welded together by a handle. That's what they used to be. You used to fill that with rocks. Now you can get a $100 beautiful giant dumbbell, or more if you want to.
Right.
And that has come with the evolution of the gym. Year 1, it was my always concept was necessarily not building a brick and mortar in the sense of having a gym, but building a culture.
Right.
And the concept
that's important. Yeah.
That's very important. But to me, it was huge because I came from a fighting culture, so I wanted to express that in the strength community, and building legacy. I think we all chase that as a leader. I always say this saying in my other philosophies is like, you'll die twice: when you die physically and when they stop speaking your name.
Yeah.
I will fight really hard to die the second time.
Yeah.
And having my gym and having that legacy and having those people that have literally saved my life and have brought meaning to my life has been more understood in the last 5 years than in the previous 5. And I had a good conversation with a close friend.
That's part of the growth.
It is.
Yeah.
Right? It's watering the seeds.
That's the best part of the journey.
It's the fruit, right?
Yeah.
The bearing of the fruit is not what I feel, it's what I see.
Yeah.
And not so much in myself, but my lifters.
Yeah, absolutely.
And seeing them grow up from like punk kids to fucking lawyers, doctors, firefighters, police officers, like children. And I mean that 21, 20 confused assholes like we all were to fucking professional badasses.
Yeah.
And that's the most, and it's because of the gym and to get that compliment from that. And seeing that, like I had a conversation with a friend. It was very touching because he said something like, well, what we used to be in the first 5 years, it's not that way anymore. And I said, you're right. Because the man it took to make the gym is not the man it's going to take to continue it.
Yeah.
What it took, the aggression, because it's like an aggressive gym. It's a fucking invitation gym. It's an angry gym. It's pushing people. It's like, it's not for pussy shit. The DBAP, don't be a pussy, is one of our concepts. It's not for everyone. It's hard. That person that it took to ignite that culture now runs itself, right? It's like when you start a fish tank. It's officially hard work at the beginning with the coral and the fish and the bullshit, and then it becomes its own ecosystem. And that's what the gym has become in the last 10 years, where most gyms fail within the first 5 years easily, especially in a saturated city like Miami.
Like everyone's holding the same standard.
Sure.
Within the gym.
Yeah, exactly.
So if someone new comes in, it's like you got to withhold.
Yeah, and they'll tell them, hey, don't do that. Don't put that there.
Yeah.
Hey, take it easy. And that wasn't like that the first. I had to do that. Yeah. Now I got guys that have been there for 7, 8 years, lifter retention. People that don't leave that stuff is, and in the process, I fucked up and there's people have been kicked out and all that stuff. But, I mean, that's part of the game. And it's cool to see that celebrate 10 years was probably one of the best days of my life. Probably one of the most emotional days of my life.
Yeah.
Because I had my parents there. Look, man, I grew up poor. I'm a son of an immigrant. We're Colombian. We had nothing. We grew up in the fucking shitty apartments by the airport when we were fucking kids. And back in the hammocks in the fucking early 90s when it was a shit show. And to have my parents there, for them to see that their son is not necessarily rich but wealthy, was probably the best day of my life.
And aside from that, just the community you built.
Thank you.
That's what's more important, right? Like okay, like they see that you could take care of yourself and you've built a foundation for yourself and to provide for you, but then they also see the beyond, the community that was built within that, and that's not easy.
It's the best.
Exactly.
It's the best.
And I think that's the highlight of it for me. Right? Like for someone outside appreciating it, seeing it, talking to someone that's been around it, I think, because 10 years, man, that's a long time. That's dedication.
Thank you. Yeah.
So for it to get to that point, even to the point where I think me and Paul were talking about, how does it feel to, like he was saying, how does it feel to like see people like in other countries wear the Battle Axe shirt, like the merch?
It's probably
because that's really where the culture is.
I see flags hanging in Norway, Australia, England, Germany. It's great. And I talk to my cousin about this all the time. Like, we grew up West Kendall poor kids.
Yeah.
Like I didn't expect my name to be spoken out of a classroom when a teacher said my name.
Yeah.
And then Michael de la Pava was like, that's it. And my mom's a incredible cake decorator. So in her own realm, she's also very well respected. So following him, and not that I love my father too, but just my mom has been a very big icon for me.
Yeah.
It's emotional. I'm a passionate, emotional man. To see the Battle Axe Gym in Australia when we have a 950 square foot facility. I am not one of these fucking 5,000 mommy and daddies loan money. Like I fucking had to literally get a credit card and quit my job and sweat with ramen noodles for 4 fucking years. And that builds a certain tenacity in me that will never go away. But to see Strong as Fuck, when I went to Norway, I just came back from Fed for Strength with Kiki out there, and I sponsored that. To see people hold my Strong as Fuck shirt and like cherish it, oh man, like it's people are 5,000 miles away.
Yeah.
Wanting that because of what it means, not because of what it says.
Yeah.
Is probably one of the greatest achievements I've ever done.
And that's you brought up the whole thing about the gym, and we had Dr. Stefan up here, who at the time was working with the Detroit Pistons, right? Mm-hmm. And he wanted to come back to Miami, just have his own gym, and he talked about like it was the worst timing to build a gym because when they did it, it was right during the pandemic. So he was like, man, it was the worst because we were working. He's like, the gym was not much bigger than this room, right? He's like saying, so we couldn't have many people in there. We had to have one at a time. So we were working like 11, 12 hours in a day because you got to get one client per thing.
Yeah.
And then the athletes want to come in. They don't really want to train with anybody else because they have all this COVID stuff that they got to do, right? So if an NBA player comes in, we have to do him by himself. And
you have to clear the hour.
Yeah, exactly. You have to. So we're not making any money. We're not making enough to survive the gym, right? He's like, thank God the PPP came in. That helped us out for like another month, right? He's like, but that didn't really do much. And then now he's at a point where like, he's like, man, as soon as it was over, we were able to get people back inside. And now, boom, he's opening up a brand new, bigger gym, right? And that's the same thing. Like you opened it, like you said, credit cards. We sacrificed what we had to do for this gym because you believe in it.
Sure.
And ultimately, it built a community, a foundation. We're seeing it in other countries. So that, man, is fucking inspirational. And what I want to say to the people out there, because I always say this is a thing of inspiration, right? Someone's journey will inspire someone, right? It might not inspire everybody, or if you're in this type of field, or if you're in this type of profession, or if you want to build your own gym, whether it's powerlifting, strongman, whatever kind of gym it is, the journey still is going to be the same. You have to build a culture. You have to build a community, a strong foundation. And you heard it here. Like, it's 10 years in the game, 5 years in, nowhere near to 5 years, the next 5 after that.
Yeah.
So first 5 years were a little bit of like, we're going to build, like, that's how long it took to build that culture, 5 years, right? Like, that's a long.
It's backbreaking. It's like anything else in life, a relationship or, whether it's romantic or friendship. The first years take a lot of standards.
Yeah.
You have to put your foot in the dirt. You have to draw lines in the sand that are cemented.
Yeah.
It's very hard it's easy to be in the gray area once you have established something. But the first 5 years take commitment. And they take a commitment that will take a toll. I always tell, and I always give credit to my girlfriend. It's like, I didn't take her or anyone else to dinner for years. I drove a shitty car and I ate shitty food because it took so much work to put this up. When you have a business, and I don't mean like online platforms have really opened up a different level. And I don't want to dog that. It's just I have an online business as well as a coach. But when you have a brick and mortar with an overhead, there is some sort of survivability and tenacity that digs into your bones that you have to do so much sacrificing that you're like, when will this end? And it doesn't that it doesn't end. It never ends, but it changes. Yeah. And the first 5 years, man, they took a fucking fuck ton of energy and commitment and discipline. And I was that guy that probably wasn't going out much. And I was working constantly and not sleeping. And I'd go out and be like, how much is a drink? I'm like, oh, okay, I'll just have one. And that sucks because I grew up poor. I know what that feels like to go like, oh, we're not going on vacation, or don't go over the house because you don't want to eat their food.
Yeah,
I hated that feeling. And now to be able to do whatever I want, respectfully, doing what I love to do is probably one of the greatest achievements that I've ever had and will ever have, whether this goes up or not.
With sacrifice always comes a payoff.
Absolutely,
especially if you're dedicated to it.
Right, and I think this connects and goes full circle into when you ask me about fighting. It's like the same thing I felt when I opened the gym. Like, do I have what it takes? Like, I might not be getting punched in the face, but my soul was getting ripped apart. And I needed that. I needed to prove to myself that I could first. I know I'm very, very stoic in the sense of putting myself first in the challenges and proving myself to me first so that it emanates to others.
Okay.
And once that gym took flight, I'm like, okay, I can do this.
So here's another question that I have. We got 10 years. How do we evolve the next 10 without being satisfied? Like, right? How does the goal say, how do we make it stronger? It doesn't necessarily have to get bigger, right? Because you don't want to fluff it.
Right.
You want it to maintain its,
Yeah, and I think but part of the answer is what you just said, it's being satisfied with being unsatisfied. That could be a slippery slope for some people. I think sometimes people will grasp that concept and let them fall into a hole and never be satisfied. But being satisfied with being unsatisfied is being in love with the process of always having to climb up, like Sisyphus.
Right.
We always have this concept, the more weight, the climbing. We have this philosophy, I do personally, and I instill that in those people that are very close to me, that the process of digging and climbing is the aspect of growth. That's what you have to fall in love with. There is no end game. There is no, perfect ending to this. It's, something will end abruptly now or everything ends, but it's the climb. So to me, to grow the next 10 years is to fall in love with the process of continuously making myself better in this aspect. Not necessarily going, am I going to be bigger in 10 years? Or saying, what do I need to do now to work harder? And that will, in the outcome will come the consequences. Like I said about physical, so I always translate everything into training. If I work hard, if I eat right, if I don't be an asshole, I will also look good, but my performance is first.
Yeah.
That's how I also apply it to work. If I work hard, if I grow, if I change, if I adapt, then I will get the abs of my business because I'm working hard and I'm doing right. So for me, growing on an online platform, adapting, understanding that I love my brick and mortar, and I do that primarily, but I've been working with a good friend and a mentor, Paul O'Neid, who we had on our podcast as well. It's like, now I need to look at this professionally from a business aspect. I make the 10-year mark. Yeah. I need to now talk to myself more respectfully like a CEO, an entrepreneur, and a businessman, not just some guy, that I am making an annual income of such and such. I need to respectfully, with like Excel sheets, good accountability, what is giving me my biggest dollar per hour worth, and sit with that and start creating that and bringing what the Battle Axe Gym is on brick and mortar to the online space.
Right.
If you're not working in the online space as a coach, you're bleeding yourself dry.
Yeah.
Not adapting to what the world is becoming. I'm not going to be that.
You're limiting yourself.
Yeah, I'm not going to be like, get off my fucking lawn, I fought for you and Nam, but adapt to seeing what's going on now and keeping true to my roots in the sense of what I am as a gym and bringing that to the next space and next level. That's what's going to keep growing those 10 years financially, because if it's financially stable, I will be allowed to always express myself. I don't ever want to sell out for who I am and what I am just to make money. If I did, I wouldn't own a gym.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
Yeah, you don't coach because you like money. You just don't. Now, let's say something you said at the beginning of the show, it's like, what you charge people for is the fucking 15 years of work.
Yeah,
you know, when you're plumber,
you pay for experience.
When you have a plumber that fixes your shit in 10 minutes, you're like, why the fuck did I pay? He's like, lady, I've been doing this for 20 years. You're paying for 20 years.
Get the guy that just started. He ain't gonna do it in 10
do
minutes.
it. You're gonna charge $50 for shit shows.
You might come back next week and do it again.
And do it again. Now you're paying for 6 hours. And that's where I feel.
Yeah. So aside, and you know, we've talked about the gym, the people, the community. You know, what we haven't touched on is what the gym does for the community outside of the strongman. I know you've done some stuff for like charities, some collaborations, right? So let's talk about that a little bit. Let's let the people know, you know, because that's important too, right?
Yeah.
The give back is always important.
And I'll tell you why. I think explain to you why first is important. And I'll say this: I don't know if you remember Gladiators, one of my favorite movies.
Yeah, I mean,
and he goes,
it's on TV basically like every week.
Yeah, you remember when he goes, Proxima, you're in danger of becoming a good man.
Yeah,
that was one of my quotes back when Facebook quotes was a big deal.
Was that when the king was telling him that?
When he's talking, so he's talking to Proxima and he's talking to Maximus, and the guy Proxima lets him go, and he goes, "Are you in danger of becoming a good man?" He's like, "Well, I'm not going to praise myself a good man. I'm a bad man that does good things because he understands what bad men do."
Yeah,
and I understand that I've grew up in a life where a lot of my friends do bad things, and giving back to the community. And I'm not saying I'm a fucking animal criminal. I just understand. I mean, we grew up in Miami. I understand this world. It's a part of paying penance, and I've always admired men and women in positions of power, whether it's small, A class or D class, that give back to a community and an area because they know what eating shit feels like.
Yeah.
And that was one of my things. And I'll quote that the strongman community is very famous for this. We always give back. You know, my buddy Alan from Florida Strongest Man always does a toy run. You know, we do stuff for the veterans. My buddy John does. And I knew that when I had the platform, when I first opened up from Miami's Baddest 1 and Thanksgiving Throwdown, which is our powerlifting meet now in November.
I saw that.
We have always donated to charity in some capacity because I finally have a platform to give back. And I finally have enough way to generate money to give back.
Yeah.
It's not giving the $1 at Publix. It's giving thousands of dollars at a meet.
Right.
And although sometimes for something like Nicholas Children, which we donated, I think like $3,500, might be a drop in the bucket when people are giving millions. It's the effort, and it's allowing people to be part of something more than themselves.
Yeah.
I'm opening up an avenue for you to buy a shirt and donate $5 so that you feel good, but you know you're doing something that's part of a bigger picture. Yeah. And I think ultimately, philosophically, being part of something bigger is something that we desire as human beings.
Yeah,
and it's a great way to fight depression and anxiety. And that's another reason why I do it, because following something that's bigger than you will get you out of bed in the morning, I promise you.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not praising myself this fucking.
No, I get it.
You understand where I'm coming from.
Well, listen, I do every year, and I don't really promote it. But I partner up with like a high school basketball team or something like that, and I do a toy drive every year for Christmas for Nicholas Children's, and we do it for the heart department, right? I know the head nurse there. I message her every year. I say, hey, we're going to, you know, and I feel like, if you're a kid waking up at a hospital on Christmas, that sucks, right? The least you could do is, especially if you're like waiting for a heart transplant or something like that, you know, the least you could do is have a G.I. Joe or something, right?
Yeah.
So, and even that, like, I don't ever, so I make a flyer for it. And then I'll have the school promote it on their stuff. But on my stuff, like, even when I post it, I send it to people like DMs. I don't even like post it as like a whole.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, because I don't want to make it a thing, and
you don't want the empathy for it. Yeah.
Listen, I have the pictures in my phone of like the toys and stuff. If you go on, I don't really have social media. Like I don't have it like my personal Instagram. Right? Sure. I guess like the fire show is
smart man.
Is
my
right. But you won't go like I have a Facebook, but you won't go on there and find out one picture of me doing this.
Right.
Right. But you go on my phone and I have the pictures because people want to take pictures. You know,
sure.
like so I feel the same way. Like I don't. To me, it's like, you know, what way can I give back? But I don't really care about people knowing.
I always say it's a way of paying penance for our souls. Those people that come from, I'm not necessarily, I guess we're on the same wavelength here. It's like when you grow up with lacking something, whether it's emotionally or spiritually or physically, you don't want other people feeling that way.
Yeah, exactly.
That's it. It comes from that feeling of fulfilling that hole. And it's something working with my cousin, Danny, who runs the Bearded Villains, who's also a charitable group here. They've really refined my ability to help charity because they've done it so well. He's opened avenues for like Nicola's children and working with breast cancer associations and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And just making them more.
My mom's a breast cancer survivor.
Hey, fuck yeah. We worked with...
Stage 4, man.
Wow.
Yeah.
Beast, man.
Yeah,
fuck
beast.
yeah.
Actually, she survived cancer twice, but the second time it was cancer. The first time it was cervix. So my mom's had it rough.
That's will. That's the will, you know. And it's... I'll mention something about spine injury and that too, but I worked with a health initiative in breast cancer, and we worked directly with a group of women that go around house to house and offer like mammograms and stuff to the local community for like impoverished minorities. And we did that in Miami Throwdown 2021. And I just thought it was the most amazing thing. And just being able to work with them and grow that community has been amazing. And again, just having the ability to do that, and to bring back to the point I mentioned about breast cancer, I talked to Dr. Stuart McGill, who's one of the best spine specialists in the world. And he says there's something to be said about women that beat breast cancer that have this kind of undominable will that they're going to win.
Yeah.
And he says sitting in a room with breast cancer survivors there's more courage and will than any strength athlete room ever.
Yeah.
And
I believe that, bro.
It's the attitude.
Yeah. My mom had a 19-hour surgery.
Bro, you know what I mean? And when you see that, you do understand that the will is going to save the life. Like, your mom's ability to have discipline through life is very important, but her will saved her life. And when it's physically seen, both physically, scientifically, and physiologically, how do we do that as athletes? Well, you have to fucking believe.
Well, this is a true story, man. When I first met the doctor, I was already like an adult, right? Because my mom had breast cancer when I was in 8th grade.
Fuck.
So when I finally met the doctor that gave her the surgery, one day I just went with her. Like recently, this was maybe like 4 or 5 years ago. I don't remember. It was a lady. We went to her office just for like a checkup or something like that. She was not feeling some discomfort. And the lady, when my mom was in the room, she said, you know, when your mom was having the surgery, we told her, you know, there's a chance you might not even make it through the surgery, right? And my mom said, no, that's not happening.
Like, no.
Like, yeah, like I have a son to get back to. I'm not going anywhere. And like it's so hard to like keep my composure there, right?
I would have broke down all
So I'm like trying to keep my composure. Even right now I'm trying to keep it. And just thinking like that, because you're in 8th grade, I'm 14 years old, 13 years old. I don't really understand. You know, I know, okay, this is not good. You know, I want, but to hear, you know, I wasn't allowed to be in those rooms, in those conversations. Those things were not, I was not allowed to be around that, right? My mom didn't want me to, like, my mom was like, the day of the surgery, she's like, go to school, have a normal day. I'll be back. I'll see you when you get back, right?
Not knowing the level.
Yeah.
Right.
And me not understanding, like, yo, this is going to be 19. I didn't even know how long it was. I'm like, the whole day's going by. I'm like, yo, how is this thing not over?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I remember seeing this lady, and that was the first thing she told me. She's like, she's got balls. Like, she's got, because what she was going through was like really pretty much, it was 10%. Like
Stage 4.
Yeah.
That's it.
There wasn't much room there for survival. And she said, remember, like right before we put her in, she was like, I'm coming back. I got my son. And you know why it means so much to me, man? Because I don't have family.
Sure.
Right? So like, if she's not here,
that's
the
it. One.
Yeah, I don't have like cousins like that. I don't have a brother or sister, right? My mom had cancer in the cervix, so she can't have kids. So I don't have any brothers. I don't have any sisters. I don't really have like a big family. Most of my family passed away due to alcoholism and stuff like that, drugs and stuff like that. So what should have been a big family, on my grandfather's side, there's 10 brothers and sisters, right? So that's what's supposed to be a big family pretty much died young.
Fuck.
You know, I think, and on my mom's side, my mom's mom died before I was born from cancer, and then, you know, my grandfather died of Alzheimer's, but then, you know, like all his brothers and sisters were all like alcoholics or drug addicts, and they just didn't live very long. So my family is pretty much non-existent. Right. So if she goes, I'm alone.
Sure.
And a part of me, like, she understood that. You know, she's like, this is not, we're not going nowhere. And today, she just turned 59 on September 30th.
Happy birthday to her.
Which is what, like Friday. That was Friday. So she just turned 59 on Friday. And to still have her here.
Killing it.
Yeah, it's fucking awesome.
And, man, that's a beautiful story, man. I'm also, I get it. I don't know if I'm just getting older, but shit like that makes me emotional because I think when you get older, you appreciate the frailty of life.
Yeah, I do.
It's just too it's too visceral not to get emotional about that. And talking about that stuff and hearing that, I mean, you cannot doubt the will. First of all, moms are
fucking beast. Yeah, they're beast.
I love my mom is literally the matriarch of the family.
They're beast.
And is my biggest inspiration is my mother, which is, you know, it's funny when as men, you know, most of that we're all mama's boys in some sense, but I have a great concept of both manhood and motherhood from my mother, and I also have the same concept of my father. I have really great parents. I love my parents, Ugo and Nora. They're still alive. They're still with me. They both portray both aspects, right? You know, my mom has masculine traits in the sense of she was the go-getter, the money winner.
My mom's that, yeah.
But also she's a mom. She's loving and caring in her sense. And then my dad is a man, always giving man advice to experience. He was adventured as a youth and did some shit, but also very maternal in the sense of very caring, very affectionate. Yeah. So I've been very blessed in that aspect, and just give it up to parents for sure, man.
Absolutely,
that's a life changer.
And maybe like to what you were saying, it never hit me, but maybe that's why I feel like, bro, I think about like I see those little St. Jude commercials and shit that hits me hard, right, bro? So then that's why I say like every year I think to myself, I'm like, bro, just think about being a kid in a hospital on the 25th of Christmas, you know, like that fucking sucks.
I think
to not wake up with something is like.
Right, and that's why I always play jokes. I guess jokingly, but not jokingly. I have like I call it the sad heart kid. You know, like maybe it's a Hispanic trait, but we have a very sad heart, and we've seen things and we've grown through things, and it's what you do with that sadness is very important. It's what you do with that hardship, what you do with that weight. That's very practical and pragmatic. Like, what are you going to do with it? And when you know what it feels like to not have something, it's like you can either get bitter and fuck the world, or you can go, hey, I don't want that little asshole growing up to be an asshole because no one cares about him. I'm always trying to. We got lucky because I know a lot of people my age and my friends that took the alternate route are in jail, dead, fucking super fucked up because they grabbed it and just like destroyed themselves with it. You know, either one single parent homes or parents being fucking in jail and in drugs, and they just became animals.
Yeah,
I don't blame them.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're still my friends, but I'm like, that's what I said. Like, I don't fucking blame you, but I even though I had a pretty good upbringing in the sense of love and stuff, I'm gonna use what I did and help others. That's it in that aspect.
So to wrap it up, let's get into the podcast. Does the podcast promote what the gym culture is? Are you trying to like bring new people into the community to say this is what we do, and if this is what you want to be a part of, or you know, what is the concept there?
So. It originally started with a way of being able to express my education and my experiences. That was the first few episodes. And then actually for the last probably 30 plus episodes, my co-host John Banks, who's one of my closest friends and I consider him a brother, we found it to be cathartic and therapeutic for us.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about it.
I said to myself, if you want to listen, that's on you. And I appreciate you.
Exactly.
And I'm hoping this helps you. But me and him do this for us and others secondary. Yeah. And that has come, it's like when you, the Stoic concept of or also mindful meditation, when you put the life preserver on yourself. You cannot help another drowning person unless you put the life preserver on yourself. And that show has become something like that.
Yeah.
It had allowed us to put a life preserver on ourselves, to express topics that will transcend strength sports philosophically, mentally, physiologically. And then if somebody gets a good feeling from it, fuck yeah. But it's like like bands that make music for themselves, like they never sell out, and then suddenly they make a commercial album and you're like, fuck these guys.
Yeah.
I always want to be that group of people that make shows for themselves with topics that are either controversial or deep. Typically they always end up pretty deep. And then go on beyond that. And we have had some incredible topics, from both gym philosophies to anniversaries to really incredible guests, you know, that are major in the strength community, and we've been lucky enough to have them. So it's been an amazing experience.
Yeah, and see, for me, it's reversed. I do this for other people,
sure,
but I just enjoy it so much, right? And I don't. When people tell me like, oh, how much money do you spend, or how much, I'm like, at this point, it doesn't even bother me.
So that's what we do. John says the same thing. I'm like, hey, and he's like, no. I'm like, okay.
It doesn't even.
It's an investment.
But I love it. Yeah. Like because I read a lot. But primarily what I read is autobiographies, right? Because I love listening to people's stories. Yeah. So for me, while I'm doing this for other people to be motivated by what other people are doing, if they want to be in those fields, I say, bro, I'm learning here, right? I've learned in every facet of everybody that's been on here. I've learned something from everybody. Right. So for me, it's enjoyable just to sit here and say, man, this is like getting an hour and a half autobiography for me, you know? Just right here. I don't have to read it.
It's a live autobiography.
Yeah. And bro, I'm telling you, that's all I read, right? If you ask me, I don't read like the Harry Potters and none of that stuff. Like, it's nothing against it, right? There's respect there, because to drop that kind of world, you have to have an imagination of a lifetime.
Yeah.
Right? Like, if you watch that movie, you're like, how did this lady, she came up with her own language. Like, this is nuts, you know?
Nothing. No.
But, and so it's not that I don't enjoy that. I just feel like, for me, productivity-wise, I read, you know, a Bruce Lee philosophy book, or I read MLK's autobiography or something. I say, I take so much from this because I'm learning from that person. And there's some do's and don'ts, right? You know what I can't stand? I hate it so much. And it actually happened the day I bought the book. One of my favorite books is the MLK autobiography, right? And when I'm buying the book, the lady in the register, she goes, "Oh, it's a great book." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm super stoked about it. I can't wait to read it." Yeah, that's why I'm buying it. Yeah. And she goes, "It's a shame that he cheated on his wife." And I was like, God, first of all, I didn't even know that at the moment, right? But I'm like, this is the first thing I'm hearing. Like, you know, like, damn, nothing else came up. And now it's like, I saw a trending video the other day. It was like a lady's like, "Oh, he wasn't shit, cheating on his wife." And I'm like, okay, first of all, there's no evidence of that. Let's get there's no real proof. And I go, second of all, there's we can't just take away a body of work because of one unethical mistake. You know what I mean?
But that's, you know what? And I agree with you 100%. I learned that in college. A teacher said that, and he said that to me. I'm like, it's okay to humanize the man, but don't defer or don't diminish the legacy.
Yeah, man. There's a lot of achievement.
Stop.
There. Yeah.
Like, don't do that.
Exactly.
You know? Because if that's the case, then everything in history should be ripped apart.
Yeah, yeah.
Because every man and woman ever in the face of history is a piece of shit, because we're all humans.
Yeah, we're all humans.
So
exactly.
Fucking, at that point, from Harriet Tubman to Martin Luther King to fucking Simón Bolívar and Napoleon Bonaparte, all trash.
And that's what I take from it. Like, okay, what you're telling me now is he's human.
Yeah.
If it happens,
anyone that
he made a
understands
mistake.
history, like a real history person,
exactly.
will be like, okay, so?
Yeah.
Like Alexander the Great and Genghis Khan, who literally changed the face of the earth, were also fucking animals.
Yeah.
Like, stop, don't do that.
And it's like telling me, like, yo, tell me how he organized the boycotts for the buses.
Right.
Like, tell me, because when you read that whole chapter, you say, yo, this is some like real struggle shit.
And that
we're all walking
on the face of death because they wanted to kill him. It wasn't like they wanted to like.
No. He talked about bombs. You know,
they don't want to like blast him on social media. They wanted to literally kill him.
And it was like, and I'm like, damn, that one thing. And you know what? It triggered me so much because after I read the book, right, it's like a little insert, because these writings are also given by his wife.
Oh, wow.
Right? These are like his actual letters.
I'm going to get this book.
Oh, it's freaking awesome.
That's awesome.
And it's she's the one that helped write this thing, but like she's providing the letters that he writes. And there's a whole chapter on, like, I don't even want to say whole chapter. It's like 4 pages on basically when they were trying to say that this happened, right? These allegations, that they had recordings of him. They were tapping his phone and he had these recordings, or his assistants and stuff like that. Okay. And but there's no real hard evidence on any of this. Right. But he does talk about it in his letters. He's writing about it like, oh, they're trying to frame me and this and that. Right. And but you read all the other letters that he writes to her and to everybody else, and you're like, man, dude, the kind of like, I could have never done that. Right. You know what I mean? Just organizing so many things that he did and the sacrifices that he made. Right. This guy was wealthy. Sure. Right? So towards the end of his life, he literally lived in the slums because he wanted to see how these neighborhoods, like he moved to Chicago, was living in the slums, was living in the hood, because he wanted to grasp what was bringing down the community, right? How could he change it? Like what could he do? That's how he dedicated the last few years of his life, pretty much just trying to figure out how can he change. And I to me, it's one of the greatest books I've ever read. Just, you know, I would definitely recommend it. Yeah.
Oh, let's see that. But that's the thing. It's like trench. I always call that trench warfare. People in the trenches, you know, mentally, physically, or whatever, are always going to inspire.
Yeah.
And it comes from. Where would you follow a man with rusty armor or bright armor? man or woman, you want to see somebody with some battle scars, whether
Of
they're
course.
internal or not. And that only comes from the trenches.
Of course. Yeah. So the podcast, you release it once a week, once a month?
So we do that at least once a month. It also depends on our
schedules.
Yeah, exactly. We do it at the studio, so it's Edge Gap is really good to us. But we do it like we have one coming up soon. I was gonna do one last week, and I just was too mentally taxed.
Yeah.
The podcast, we always leave a piece of our soul on there, and I never want to do a podcast just because it's scheduled. I want to do a podcast because it's right.
Yeah.
And it's, being a guest is awesome because you're doing the work. I'm just responding.
Yeah.
But being the host is very hard.
Yeah.
And it's very mentally. You get out of here feeling great.
You gotta have some preparation.
But also tired.
Yeah.
You're tired. And preparation.
I told, like I tell people, like, if you don't prepare, it's also like a disservice to that person.
Correct. It's
right?
like not making weight.
Yeah. Like they showed up and you're like, well, tell me. Just tell me.
Hey, exactly. Just tell me.
You got to do some kind of research. You got to, because it's also like you're here to appreciate them. Right. So if you didn't do shit, what are you doing?
Yeah, being a good host is being selfless.
It's like
being a good coach. And so we do it about once a month. And it's crazy because I don't listen to my own podcast. I don't. And as much as I love the sound of my own voice, I don't. I don't
know why that doesn't bother me.
I don't know why. It's not. Which is really because I love me, and everyone laughs at that. Like, I'm okay with me. I'm like one of those guys that's like, I like me.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with me.
Yeah.
John, my co-host, does, and he'll come up with some quotes, and he'll say them, and I'm like, yo, who said that? He's like, no, you said that on episode whatever. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
And it's cool to have those documented for the rest of my life.
I agree with that.
And it's like I have my own, something I can grasp for the rest of my life, and I even tell people. When I work with someone, like, oh, listen to this episode. Listen to the Warrior Code. Listen to More Weight. Listen to the Dig Down. And that'll give you a better conversation. And then come talk to me after that.
Yeah.
And that's cool to have like my own book of reference, my own being like, hey, do that. And this is what I believe in. Because we've had conversations like this where they just go into some incredible moments in my life. And I think that's probably the podcasting has been one of the greatest things ever for me.
Yeah.
In the sense of feeling cathartic and allowing to
like a sense of
express myself. Yeah, and then the webinars that we're doing recently or just started is a way of doing that and monetizing it. But the podcasts have really just been a great way of just leaving a piece of my soul and record or being recorded for the rest of my life.
It also lets people know like what they get or who they're dealing with when they come to your gym.
Right. And
they want to be a part of that.
Exactly. And I don't pull any punches. I am always the way that I am.
Yeah.
Obviously there's a private side of me, Michael De La Bava, that I keep to my friends and family. Obviously. We all do that.
Everybody
has. But for the
piece.
most part,
I'm super private.
Yeah.
I could I'm somebody told me, why would you do this? You have to like promote a lot and I'm terrible at it, right?
Right.
And I'm like, because I like it. I enjoy it. And I'm like that kind of person that I could be in the middle of Dubai right now. Nobody would know.
Yeah.
Like you wouldn't have a picture of it.
No way.
I just don't do that.
Yeah.
I'm just a complete opposite of that. So this is also groundbreaking for me because I have to bring myself out of my shell.
Sure.
Right? So even when we did season 1, I was debating whether I was going to do season 2. And the guy that does the editing for the show, he was like, dude, you'd be stupid not to do it. He's like, look at how good season 1 did. He's like, you're getting all these views. He's like, you're a nobody.
Right.
Like there's no trace of you online. Right? So he's like, that means people are watching it and they're like enjoying it. And I was kind of like, all right, I guess that makes sense. Yeah. So I'll do it. Yeah. I'll continue to flow with it. And that's why I said the money didn't matter. Right? Because like you would think like, oh, we just did season 1. We spent the money to rent this place and do the whole thing and put all this stuff together and the editing and all this stuff. And then you think about it and you say, I didn't care.
Right.
I just enjoyed it so much that like he gave me that little bit of advice and I was kind of like, all right, it didn't take much effort for me to keep going.
Right. And that's what makes it so genuine.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's the best source. It was something that to my cousin and me were talking once, and it's like the best leaders ever born are the ones that never wanted the job in the first place.
Yeah.
And I would argue that leaders are born.
Game of Thrones style.
Yeah, right. I would argue that leaders are born.
Yeah.
There's something there. It just needs to be ignited by life.
But there's truth to that.
Sure.
Right? And have you watched Game of Thrones?
Yes.
Okay, so and I big on, and this we're gonna end here, but I say this all the time. I say I knew the whole Daenerys thing was gonna happen because she was too obsessed with the power.
Sure.
At that point,
crazy.
yeah.
And it's in her bloodline too.
I didn't even think she was gonna go crazy to that extent.
Yeah.
That never crossed my mind. I just thought she's never gonna hit the throne. Right. Like if she gets it, it's gonna be a one day.
Too much.
Yeah, it's too much for her. She's already like obsessed with bending the knee, and all this stuff, and people that want. And I believe that there's so much truth to that. The best leaders are the people that didn't want it to begin with, which is why like people are like, oh, I can't believe Brand got it. He didn't want it.
And John didn't want it either.
Yeah.
Both of those guys would have
and they were well qualified for the situation, right?
Sure.
But they weren't obsessed with being there. Right. That wasn't in their character. And there's so much truth to that. And I believe that. Yeah. I'm genuinely and that show is are you watching House of Dragons?
Yes, I haven't seen the last one. Actually,
neither have I.
Okay, cool. I need to see this one today. I'm behind on the last one. And there was something we were talking about.
The one before this one, by the way, felt like the most Game of Thrones-ish.
Fuck. Okay,
right?
I need to see it. I don't know. I haven't seen last week's.
No, not last week's. The week's.
Oh yes, because of the yes.
Yeah, that one felt
so
the most
controversial as fuck.
Yeah, because you already started. I was having already some doubts.
Yes.
Right, and then when that episode came out, I said, "This is why I'm gonna watch the show."
Yeah,
like they brought it back. Okay, this is because now all the plots are unraveling.
Well, I love character development.
Exactly.
I love that. I don't care if you don't swing a sword for 16 episodes. I'm like, yes,
but
give me the juice.
So here's the thing. I agree with you. I love origin movies.
Sure.
Like I'm huge on origin movies. Like if you ask me like what's your favorite, like I tell people all the time, what's your favorite Harry Potter movie? That first one, bro.
Yeah.
Like they're kids, like you're discovering the world with them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you're now being introduced. So I love that one.
Yeah.
And people are like, bro, that's like the first one. And I'm like, yeah, but if you ask me what the best one is, you said what's my favorite. The best one is the last one.
Yeah.
Right? That's but I can go with that with plenty of movies, right?
They're so dark, those last two. I've seen those movies.
They're super dark. But they're awesome.
Yeah.
You didn't ask me what the best one was. The best was the final one, to me. Yeah. But if you ask me my favorite, it's the first one because I'm an origin kind of guy, Batman, or I love to see how all that shit was created. And stuff. Yeah, I love it. Me too. I love the origin story. So so I'm big on the character development. Right. But the final, if I waited a long developmental period, it better be like some action. Yeah, there better be something at the end of that, right?
Yeah,
There's got to be something.
Yeah, because they have to build that up.
Give me my reward.
Yes,
for dealing. That's like great. I would never watch it again, to be honest with you. But it was a great movie in terms of acting. The Joker.
Yes,
the last one, right?
I watched it once. I'm okay.
Yeah, exactly. It was like I tell people all the time, great movie, right? The acting, the buildup of, because we've never seen him be built like this,
sure.
Right? This is like, we're talking about a whole different mental aspect. You're really seeing this guy develop mental health issues as he's got problems.
Right.
And we've never seen it like this. We've just seen him as a villain, straight ahead.
Oh, with no issues.
With no, like, yeah.
He was just born crazy.
Exactly. Yeah. We didn't get all that. And you watch this movie and you're like, bro, this is savage. You know? And then you see it and I say, great movie. I would never watch it again.
It's tough.
And that whole movie is basically building a character. The whole movie.
For the rest.
Right.
With a different.
There's a part 2 coming out now. So now now I'm like, the movie was good. I can't wait for part 2. Because at the end of part 1, he's already fucking shit up.
So now things
gonna happen. So now it's gonna get. So I didn't mind that 2.5 hour situation if we're gonna get a part 2. Because the best part of the movie was the last 30 minutes, 20 minutes of the movie.
Yeah, because you can get the taste.
Yeah, like you're already like, oh, he's fucking the Joker now.
He's crazy.
Yeah,
now.
he's officially the Joker now. So that was worth it. But you're like, damn. 20 minutes.
I think my favorite parts of that movie, I love the psychology of it. It was the breakdown. I love the correlation with his mother. I love the imagery with his neighbor.
Yeah.
Obviously psychology to me is probably, that's what brought me into strength sports in the first place, is the psychology of everything, right? And that's my what I went to school for. That's my passion. Obviously serial killers, everyone's loved serial killers, but I think the psychology of that stuff is
it was
great.
An awesome film. Yeah. And he acted it so well.
Right. And I think that's why I fell in love with podcasting, because I had no more filters. I said, hey, on this podcast platform, I'm going to do whatever I want.
Yeah.
Yes.
And say whatever you want.
It's strength correlated, but it's the psychology. I'm not going to have a podcast on the biomechanics of the squat.
Yeah.
It's very boring.
Yeah.
But the philosophy or the effort or the mentality that it takes to squat, or how that correlates to life, and why training at a gym, aside from having the neuroplasticity of changing gray matter in your brain, but how that applies to life is huge. And that's why we have episodes when we were talking before the show, like more weight and everything ends, and these philosophies.
Oh, we didn't get into the more weight.
Yeah.
How much time do we got? We got time for the more weight?
Oh, yeah, I guess so.
We got a little bit of time.
Yeah, we got. That's not a huge story.
Okay, break down the more weight thing before we leave.
Oh, okay. So,
because he said I got to hear the story from you.
Oh, word. Okay, I'm glad I brought it up, because actually one of our podcast episodes is more weight, but we have I'm a big believer in the power of words. Like I said, the will to win is something we have a shirt. It's imprinted in one of my walls at the gym. Everything ends is another one that's very important to me. And then more weight. When I was a young man, like in high school, the Salem witch trials were always part of the thing. I remember we used to read it as a play. And there was a part in that play where there's a guy. It's actually based on a true story. His name is Giles Corey. I used to call him Giles Corey, but apparently it's Giles Corey. And they accuse him of being a witch.
Okay.
And he's just like, but they accuse him that because he's weird. He's just like he tends to the fields. He's not very liked. He's very lonely. So what they do is that they arrest him, and there was a way of suffocating or crushing people to death. They would put a platforms on you, beneath you, and over you. And they would load weights on you and slowly, very slowly, while having your arms extended over your head, crush you. And they would just add weight after weight. So you're just literally being crushed by weight as you're extended as far as you can go.
Because they thought he was a witch?
Because they accuse him of being a witch. And they're like, hey, confess. If you confess, you'll die as a Christian. But if you don't confess, you're a witch.
So he's basically like, fuck that, I'm going to die anyways.
Yeah. And he just getting crushed. He's getting crushed. And he's like, finally they get to the point where it's like tons of stones on him, and he's barely down. You can hear bones cracking. He's suffocating. And they ask him, confess, Giles, confess. And he looks at them and he says, more weight.
Yeah.
Which is probably the most G thing ever on the fucking planet. And that resonated with me as a kid, because instead of succumbing to pressure, he died as a man who he was.
Because I can guarantee you he wasn't a witch.
He wasn't. It was just these crazy fucking chicks going crazy. And we came up with the shirt, and it obviously the concept of weight transcends just literally weight, but that's life and that's training. Yeah. There's always going to be weight. Even when, for example, after surgeries or injuries or just being downtrodden, you're right. Maybe I can't lift 700 anymore. 500 is a little bit harder for me now, but it's still more weight than I did yesterday. Yeah. And there's still more weight in my life right now than I had 5 years ago. Yeah. And instead of shying away from that, I thrive on it. That's my perspective. Even if I have to fake it till I make it. So when life gets hard, I always ask for more weight. If I am that man underneath the stones, I'm like, give me more. Yeah. Don't let me die the way I want to die.
I'm also going to die faster.
Yeah.
Let's get it over with.
Fucking crush me. Yeah. Don't take it away. Don't tell people that I died like a pussy. Like, give it to me. And we have that. If you look at our shirts, it says more weight. And then it says right in the middle, it says pressed to death. Okay. Because when Giles Corey was buried, this was my guy Vinny, who creates a lot of my art. On his tombstone says Giles Corey pressed to death. Wow. And that's badass. A very deep.
Paul's right. He definitely did more justice than he probably would. Because I know how he talks. So So I've known Paul since I was like 14, since high school. So we
boys, man. Yeah. And I love Paul, man. And that was a big deal. That's the thing. Like everything ends. Everything ends is the concept, like a memento mori, right? Everything does end. Yeah. I remember when I came up with this concept. It was because a rugby buddy of mine, Sean, told me about this. Probably a made-up story. It doesn't matter. There's two guys jumping in the ocean, and it was a very difficult, very waves and chaotic. And they were going to race, and the guy's like, hey, aren't you scared? And he looks at him. He's like, everything ends. And he dives in, which is very much like Gattaca. I don't know if you've ever seen Gattaca. No. Do yourself a favor. It's a classic. Do it. Trust me. It's a life changer. And you'll see why I said what I said about swimming into the ocean. He's like, I never thought I'd come back. But there was no coming back. I just swam because everything ends. And the concept of memento mori, that everything ends, it's a Roman concept.
Well, everything does end.
Yeah, we thrive on that. Yeah. Instead of seeing that as a pessimistic view, we and people that accept that concept is like, you use that to motivate you to go forward. Yeah. And when you have a very literal view of death and the end of things, everything does end.
And leave a legacy like the Battle Axe Gym.
Yeah, dude.
Right?
That's exactly.
For the people that want to get in contact with you or be a part of the gym or learn more about the gym, this is the time to plug it all in. We're going to put everything in the description box below anyways. Sure. So, but if you want to plug it in so they can hear
I appreciate it. The main place to reach me at is on my social media on Instagram. It's at the Battle Axe Gym, AXE. So at the Battle Axe Gym, that's my Instagram. You can also find me there the same way in Gmail, the Battle Axe Gym at gmail.com. Those are my primary sources. I also have a website, thebattleaxegym.com, and we're always constantly on, retail, selling shirts and stuff. But Instagram, I'm very proud of. If you guys reach that or DM me in any capacity, that's where we post things about our show. We have Miami Throwdown coming up in November, which We started in 2019 in Tank Brewery. We were probably one of the first, if not the first, powerlifting meet to actually open up at a brewery.
Okay.
Because
why not?
Powerlifting can get boring, so why not have a fucking beer? Yeah. And Unbranded, we started with Tank, and Unbranded is our current partners now who've been amazing. We have
Gotta hydrate.
We have our own beer, Battle Axe Brew, which is cool, man. Stupid things like that, quote unquote stupid, that a kid that grew up with nothing has their own fucking beer now, you know. And if you're listening, and I understand the premise of this show is to inspire, which I feel inspired already leaving, like that's pretty cool to see things like that. And I'm very proud of that. I still have a can from last year. I'm going to save for the rest of my life. And then we have games like Ragnarok Games, which is going to be at the Miami Expo, which is going to have people from all over the world. Okay. Over 200 athletes.
Wow.
In February at the Airport Expo, which is going to be, I can't believe that my name will be on that expo.
That's where we just saw the fight. That's where I went to go see
right,
the fight.
Right, we do the Comic-Con there and shit, and then we have Miami's Baddest in April. So shout out to everybody who's helped us out. Of course, Battle Axe Gym and my Battle Axe Clan, I will always love you guys forever. And thank you for having me out here, man.
Guys, this episode will be out October 10th. First episode of Season 2. Very much looking forward to it. Season 2 has begun. We're here. Hopefully to inspire some more people, some new stories, some new journeys for those out there that are, different career paths, different journeys, man. For me, again, this always comes down to learning and just learning people's journey. That's what I do. That's why I do this. So I hope everyone enjoys this episode as much as I did. I hope they learned as much as I did. And looking forward to seeing you back. Welcome back, everybody. Peace.